after I made my argument. I didn't actually know entirely what to expect here, and I must confess this is my first time to Manchester, and it's a great pleasure to be here. And I'm not, without getting into the local politics of it, but you've got some star leaders in the region. And I'm certainly one, over the years, who've advocated for the need for the regions, including the Northwest, be absolutely pivotal in the manner of the way in which this country needs to be run. Last time I had dinner, and I want to attest to one particular remark that was made about AI. I was having dinner with a publisher who explained that if, for example, as I've now come, as I've been told, I've made, I think, 400 or 500 remarks, speeches in the House floors over whatever time that I've been there, which many people say far too long. But that apparently, that if they're all put into a certain system, that then the AI can pick up just the way in which you deliver your remarks, and that you then add that to whatever subject matter it is. You ask the right questions, it'll come out as though it'll be exactly the way you would normally make your remarks on any subject if you do the research then and join it together. Which is, I'm not saying it's scary, because I think the whole point of AI is you've got to have the experience to know what's being delivered is the right sort of remarks that you feel comfortable as being part of. But I think us making use of AI is that way around, rather than AI controlling our lives. It's absolutely fundamental, and certainly legislation is required. There is starting to be that process, but the election now, about which I'll say a very short one. I'm, by the way, not of any particular interest, but I'm an independent member in the Lords. I have no political allegiance whatsoever, and just work as an internationalist, also looking for the best interests of the United Kingdom, but also the UK in being a friend and ally, listening and adopting the right approach to the way in which we conduct ourselves around the world. But the Prime Minister yesterday made it clear that we are living in very uncertain times. By the way, it was suggested I could speak, or should speak, for about 10 minutes. I hope that's all right with you. Does that mess up your arrangement?
More if you like, sir.
There's plenty more time if you like, sir. Yeah.
Yes, more time.
Or time out, get them off the stage.
You have 20 minutes if you like.
No, but I mean, really, just, last night I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to offer as some remarks to you. But recognizing, of course, this is the freight and logistics world, and I am going to make some remarks about your sector. But Craig asked me to address some international affairs, which I intend to do. And I approach international affairs on the basis that what we have to be when doing so is being sensible and balanced. Is absolutely fundamental. But the election has taken us all slightly off guard. I mean, it just came as a shot out of the blue. I mean, I was in fact in London to lunch, in fact, with Craig, as it happens, with the London Freight Club, which we had the pleasure to be with. And then the calls came through, and it was quite astounding. I mean, although it had been suggested some time back that this would be a kind of June-July arrangement, but then one felt that this was going to be November for whatever reason, for expediency, I guess. And the only political point I'll make about political parties is I rather wondered whether, for example, the Reform Party might have been wished to be caught unawares and therefore not be able to field in all the different constituencies, because I now understand they are fielding in all the constituencies, as I understand it. And if so, it'll be very interesting to see the direction of travel this country takes as a result of that. I didn't vote. This is for all you. I mean, with respect, I'd say that it is for you to tell me and us what we need to be doing on your behalf. I don't know how well you know the place in the North, but we do try hard to bring balance and bring your issues, sets of issues before government. And I'll just say one point about the private sector. In some ways, the private sector gets a little wrong. They think in many quarters by going straight to government is the way to do things and to try and lobby your position, whatever it might be. Really, do not forget us in Parliament. We are there to serve you. And unless we're informed properly, there's very little we can do with knowledge to assist in the process. But we are a gateway into trying to bring understanding to the executive as to what and how they should be doing things. After all, our principal job is holding the executive to account. But speaking purely for myself as a crossbench parliamentarian, the UK has not lived up to the many promises and opportunities post-Brexit. In my mind, it's absolutely clear, whether you were for or against Brexit, the opportunities have not been delivered on sufficiently, which is very sad, I think. We had an opportunity to remake ourselves a little bit, and those opportunities have been squandered. We urgently need to place full endeavour on sorting ourselves out, working very much as a team rather than in silos. I look at the UK a little bit from afar, and I see that us Brits, we tend to work in silos, which is regrettable. We should all be working together, everyone around the table, discussing from wherever and whatever you bring and need to bring to the table, to sit down and work out a strategy as a team to then go out and deliver around the world. And that is for government also to be a team member as well. This is not about government doing whatever it wants in the way in which it needs to be done. They are there to support and to do what is ever in the best interest of all you here gathered, for example, around the room. But remember that the sole contribution of government, as I just explained, is in terms of trade, should be to create the right environment in terms of trade, and then to let the private sector get on with it, because it's the private sector who are the only ones who actually can deliver on these issues around the world. But let me leave you in no doubt, however, as I travel around the world, that I see the UK as very much still a brand which is not just accepted but appreciated around. And it gives one, I'm a humble sort of chap, and it's a great pleasure to hear that, and I kind of muck in with whoever I'm interacting with around the world. But it is very comforting to know that we in this country, we are still a country to be taken note of. I think we do have to be careful about the manner in which we conduct ourselves going forward, particularly in relation to AI and other such matters, because it does allow for the emerging markets, the frontier markets, to come alongside some of the larger states, such as ourselves. So we have much still to offer the world, but whilst we should be proud of our past, we do need to come to terms with our future and realistic as to what exactly is our contribution to the world at large. Now, Craig asked me to, I think it was this morning, whenever it was, to make some remarks about some international affairs. And it is an area which I've taken great interest in London, as indeed elsewhere around the world, so I happily do so. But I'd like to conclude, after having done that, with some remarks about the freight and logistics sector specifically. And I have some news for you. In fact, I said to a colleague of mine, a senior chap, that I thought I'd broken a Guinness Book of Records as a result of the freight and logistics sector. I'll tell you how in one moment. But on the question of international affairs, so the world is at a perilous moment. I mean, we can all agree to that. And I pick now 4 situations, just a very brief comment. The Levant is distressing beyond belief. Everyone knows the ramifications as to the events in that part of the world. Claims on the rights to the land and who was there first is a complex quandary. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Levant, you've been there and understand the issues on the ground, but it is an extremely complex quandary, with the only question being whether the sides can ever face reality and discuss the present and future, whilst putting the past whilst putting the current and past grievances to one side. And it's tough, but that nevertheless has to be a goal. A peace treaty will be signed one day, because there is absolutely no choice. We, all those with a vested interest in a resolution, must, however, not stay on the sidelines. But we must not take sides, but instead push the sides to face reality and negotiate on its terms. And let's all hope that it's sooner rather than later. It's a very, very sad situation all round, and I will leave it just at that. Just now, a question of China. China is often considered to be a subject of some considerable interest. But moving to that country, too much of an open door has been given to China to build on a range of strategic alliances. Beyond most notably Africa, inroads are being made down also into the Pacific. I do hope, however, that the upcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa in October would emphasize the unity and importance that we and the Commonwealth place on Pacific Rim relation. You see someone scribbling. Have I said that? Scribble, scribble, scribble. I always worry when people start scribbling on something I said, wondering what it is, but then I'm sure you'll tell me about it later.
She saw the Daily Mail.
Indeed, sir. But whatever it is, my remarks are heartfelt and balanced, which is what one always tries to achieve. But that said, and whilst it is imperative that we diversify supply chains, with India being an obvious beneficiary, and be proactive regarding the changing maritime landscape, I believe that we should not be dismissive of the relationship with China, and should be exploring ways for, not thwarting, mutual cooperation, mutual bilateral cooperation, building on our respective strengths and contribution, and recognize the importance together with all the complexities. And we all know what they are. We look at the world with our standards, with our values. Those are values which differ in different parts of the world. And I'll just leave it at that at this stage. But dialogue and engagement are always preferable. It is not as though we in the West do not hold a trump card by providing a large percentage of their marketplace. Additionally, too much over-reliance is being given to the vagaries of international law. For example, to the potential for future civil and defense long-term challenges in the northern Arctic sea route. We, those who share common ideals, must become more assertive as the world is headed towards an extended Cold War. And on that note, right must prevail in Eurasia. And I say the word Eurasia for those that understand terminology in geopolitical terms will know about the region in which I'm referring. But it would be worth also considering what has brought all this about. What lost opportunities were missed, and by whom, over a considerable number of decades. And again, I will leave it at that, but for those that take an interest in the region and the complexities within that region, I think will understand a point that I offer to you. I want to say just a finally on picking out on some various points that struck me this morning. But and it involves our relationship as the United Kingdom with our overseas territories. And particularly in regards to Gibraltar. And I only can assume now, and I saw the Minister from Gibraltar on Monday in town, and because there has been a lot of negotiations between the United Kingdom, Gibraltar, the Spanish government, and the European Union. But I presuppose that the treaty negotiations are in effect suspended. not least because there is to be a vote for now with the European Parliament. There'll be a commission need to be put into place. We are into a situation where there's an election in the United Kingdom. So all the contenders, all the players within this space are not moving on, but we'll have to re-engage with the subject. And I think really it'll be in October. But something quite extraordinary I've come across something quite extraordinary. That Article 12 of the UK-Sierra Leone bilateral FTA, the Free Trade Agreement, for example, is clear. And I refer to the British government. That the government may, in inverted commas, consider extending the same rights and privileges to an overseas territory. Now, I find that quite astounding. That in the case of Gibraltar, that we in the United Kingdom negotiate on behalf of our overseas territories, but they are not allowed to be a party to the same rights and benefits as the United Kingdom does have with a third party. It's almost, and I say this with the deepest regret, but we have to be extremely careful not to have people with this, frankly, slightly colonial approach to life. Those days have moved right on. We've moved on from those days considerably, and I do still feel that there are some in position of responsibility who haven't actually understood this entirely. Now, allow me to, and all that said, and it's a pleasure to address this up here in Manchester, and it's great actually to be out of London to make these sorts of remarks, and there needs to be much more of us as parliamentarians coming up and being up into the developed nations and around the regions of the England, of which, depending on how you place the regions of England. But the Northwest, we hear often about the situation, trains, the East-West circumstance. I know it is a really important issue on connectivity and many other relations. We need to get the inward investment into the Northwest, as in with the Northeast, with the Midlands, with the Midlands region. I particularly engage with Sir John Peterson. I mention his name only because he is a very senior Brit who really does understand and cares and works hard to deliver for the region, in his case, for the Midlands. But allow me a few specific words about the freight logistics sector as being critical to our economy and daily life. It's a privilege, therefore, to meet you all and to listen, but I with regret I'm not going to be able to stay too much longer, and I'll be having to take my leave because I'm going on to Tashkent shortly, and then on elsewhere from there. But it is great to meet people from the Northwest. I hope that you will receive me in due course or whenever you're down in town through Craig to come down and present the issues that are important to you, because for an initiative that I'm going to inform you about now. So your position and role aiding the national economy in the Northwest is absolutely undeniable. To underline this, please do not think that your concerns, and this really I would want to put on record if you'd allow me, are not central to parliamentarians in Westminster. On Monday, I was instrumental in the formation of an all-party parliamentary group with the purpose to improving the UK's freight network, evaluating global corridors and ensuring government is held accountable for performance. I can only assume the PM felt the pressure and then announced the election. But be assured that whoever is the administrator of our country in post, whenever it's going to be, after sometime after July the 4th. By the way, for those that are interested, I understand the opening of Parliament is going to be on July 17th. I'm not letting the cat out of the bag. The person who told me should know what she is talking about. So if that's of any interest to anyone, July 17th, and then there'll be a King's speech where His Majesty will deliver the new governments, because there will be a new government in whichever complexity that it has. But a second group, which I was instrumental in having formed, is to elevate the profile of UK export trade and inward investment strategies through comprehensive national and regional appraisals was also formed. And the two go together. Export promotion, inward investment strategy, the future of UK freight and logistics are all tied up together, part and parcel. But they nevertheless need to be taken separately because there is a separate sort of issues that need to be addressed in many different ways. But the future of freight strategy is a huge piece of work, and the DFT has an almighty challenge to adapt to the demands of the future. My fear is that currently government, the industry, and those who represent it, have a propensity to work, as I've suggested earlier, to work in silos, with not enough consideration of the need to view freight and logistics infrastructure holistically. There is therefore an urgent need for Parliament to join the discussion and work to ensure that the national interest is well thought through and implemented with a sevenfold set of priorities. Raising the status of freight is undeniable. Optimizing infrastructure, supporting the transition to net zero, investing in people and skills, and we heard about that from our friend just now, resilience, planning and leveling up, and data and technology with an opportunity to bring the digitalization of cross-border trade with examples such as the government's or the United Kingdom's now flagship Electronic Trade Documents Act at the forefront. And it's very interesting, as I have been engaged with organizations around the world that have the technology for example, to digitalize all trade documents, which are interoperable with e-signature. It's going to reduce the cost of doing trade. You'll be very much more competitive in your transactions. What we also do, I have an extraordinary story that in the port of Dover, HMRC accepted, I mean, it is an act of parliament, it's all there, that all those countries with English common law around the world can now avail themselves of this process, that HMRC, which is an act of parliament, you think they would know about it, is then said, fine, we understand it, but could you provide some hard copies for the transaction as well, which rather defeats the purpose of the exercise. But I do suspect that this will all work its way through with time. But I do not need to remind you that logistics is a large and growing industry across the UK, employing 2.56 million people, either directly or indirectly, accounting for 8% of the workforce. Several key areas and pressing issues must be addressed collectively, therefore, to support and strengthen the freight and logistics sector. I will be just a few more moments to go, it won't be too much. You have my assurance that one of the very first things that will happen when Parliament reconvenes, that will be post July the 17th, that a new future of UK freight and logistics will be formed. And we'll be out and about, we'll be wishing to listen and learn, and I'm just trying to work out how. I'm going to propose, I think, is to have a website with the with domains for whether it be freight or trade or whatever it is, and we need to hear from all you around the table here, what are your concerns? I'm just going to say a word about that in one moment. A very interesting conversation I had with Germany last week. So that'll help them, that will happen. And again, to encourage open dialogue and engagement between industry leaders and policy makers as being absolutely essential. I mean, I've got friends in all the parties. Well, I think I've got friends in all the parties. But I mean, one thing is that if there be an administration of a different political persuasion, and I'm not to judge, and it's for you to determine as being the all-important people to this, is that we have to ensure that the decision makers of the future fully understand the importance of, in this case, the freight and logistics sector, what needs to be done, how to do it, and we should all work as a team to help achieve it in the national interest as being optimal. We must ensure the environment is fit for purpose, support innovation, harmonise international standards, and ensure regulatory frameworks protects the industry whilst fostering growth and technological advancements, focusing on sustainability, workforce development, supply chain resilience, and continued innovation to ensure that the sector not only meets current demands, but thrives in the face of future challenges. And innovation can take different forms, cutting through everything we do. And I'd like to just offer you, in concluding remarks, some examples of that, of which I have some first-hand experience. So recognizing the need for growth and cooperation through trade, I've launched a private LinkedIn group with the purpose of fostering cooperation and development among key holders in international trade. The group is dedicated exclusively and globally to all chambers of commerce around the world, trade associations around the world, the inward investment agencies around the world, which are normally a government agency, and the export promotion agencies. The name of this private LinkedIn group is MetTrade, and we're very much trying to restrict the criteria. In 3 weeks of being live, we have 149 associations, from around the world that have signed up to it. And this brings together people like JETRO in Japan, it brings people from Hong Kong, it brings people from China, it brings people from India, from Europe, from Africa, and the Americas, including South and Latin America. The other way around, Latin America, south of the Rio Grande, Mexico, and South America. So all these are important regions. It's very important that we hear collectively what are their concerns. But here's the point that I want to make. But I will just say that I expect this association group, I call it that, will be north of 1,000 associations around the world. So there'll be a lot that we can do to discuss and to strengthen relationships around the world, in this troubled world. So I cordially invite all freight associations to join the discussion. During a most informative introductory webinar, an association in Germany addressed export-related challenges that require careful planning, risk management strategies, adaptability to changing market conditions, and leveraging of technology to help exporters navigate complexities. What they've done in Germany, it's an association in Berlin, they have identified 9 impediments of Germany doing business with the UK. I'm not going to tie you with the detail on those 9 specific points, but it does seem to me very interesting if we expanded that as a concept to around the world to know what the impediments are to doing business. That surely will eventually seep down through into your individual organizations. The webinar is up there, and there's going to be some world-class webinars, some webinars with world-class panels covering digital trade, regulatory compliance, market entry barriers, logistics and transportation, which will be a direct interest to many here gathered in the room, trade finance, payment risks and insurance-related issues, intellectual property protection, and environmental and sustainable standards. Finally, I'll be in, and it really is finally, I do apologize, I think I've never actually, I think, ever spoken to this long, but I always tell everyone, if you can't sort out the problem of the world in 10 minutes, the job's too tough for you, because in reality, it should be quite a simple matter. It's just a question of identifying really what needs to be done and just get on doing it in a way which is appropriate to doing so. But anyway, it's always so. I'll be ensuring that freight logistics participants that wish for a global, regional, or country exposure have a place within the subcategories of your industry contained within a trade enabler section of a project which I declare having a first-hand interest in, of www.goglobal.trade. So if ever you can work your way around that, you're welcome. It's all moderately automated with a light touch verification, and I work with a team of people around that world, around the project. It's an exciting project. But you get a banner, you get a click through to your website, you get 250 word profile, and that will give you a global footprint. That's the most I can do, and the numbers per region or country, because another thing about the world affairs these days is you've got to look at regions. Take India, for example. You can't take India as just one single area nowadays. You have to take it once you divide the north and the south, and then within the south you take the different provinces, and same with China and elsewhere. But I conclude, and I must conclude, in just saying how truly, and I really do mean it, how truly delighted that I am to be here, being a firm advocate that the regions is where government should be focusing its attention.